kinship.
Now, this kinship is this daring cause. So then he tells us what's going to happen here. All we attempt in this imperfect world looks forward or looks back beyond time's gloss to its pure idea and firm, inviolate type in an absolute creation's flawless skill. What a fantastic line. You see, this sentence is telling us that the daring cause of our evolution is a mighty kinship. In other words, we are kin to the divine. We are kin to all of this, even in this imperfect world. Everything that we attempt either looks forward or looks back beyond this gloss of time. And what does it look forward or back to, but to its pure idea and firm, inviolate type? And then he ends with that line, in an absolute creation's flawless skill. Now, the next line, the next two lines have always been amongst the most powerful for me. To seize the absolute in shapes that pass, to fix the eternal's touch in time-made things. This is the law of all perfection here. We used to have in the early volumes to feel the eternal's touch in time-made things. That was the 1952, and I think it was even the 1972 edition, to feel the eternal's touch in time-made things. It has been changed to fix, and I cannot comment on it here. Both can work, of course. This is the law of all perfection here. And what is that law? Well, if we can fix or if we can feel the eternal's touch in time-made things, if we can seize the absolute in shapes that pass, in forms, therefore, this is the law, all perfection here. A fragment here is caught of heaven's design. Else could we never hope for greater life, and ecstasy and glory could not be. Yes, we catch only a fragment here of this great heavenly design. But if we didn't catch that fragment, we could never hope for a greater life. And even ecstasy and glory could not be. So Sri Aurobindo is telling us here so much more than we know on earth, than we're aware on earth. Even in the littleness of our mortal state, even in this prison house of outer form. Wow, 2 commas. A brilliant passage for the infallible flame is driven through gross walls of nerve and brain. A splendor presses, or a power breaks through. Earth's great, dull barrier is removed a while. And what happens? Oh, you have gone to, here we are. Okay. The inconscient seal is lifted from our eyes, and we grow vessels of creative might. Let's look at this again, this rather long sentence. Even in the littleness of our mortal state, even in this prison house of outer form, well, he's calling our body a prison house because we die and exchange it for another body and another body. So it's in a way, it's a prison house because we're unable to keep up the body and the vital strength to enter into those higher realms. But even in this prison house of outer form, a brilliant passage for the infallible flame is driven through gross walls of nerve and brain. A splendor, notice that he capitalizes splendor, or a power, and he capitalizes power. A splendor presses, or a power breaks through. Earth's great dull barrier is removed a while. The inconscient seal is lifted from our eyes, and we grow vessels of creative might. Would that be our daily experience? That this flame could go through gross walls of our nerves and our brain, and the splendor could press through, or the power could break through, and therefore Earth's great dull barrier would be removed a while. The inconscient seal is lifted from our eyes, and we grow vessels of creative might. The enthusiasm of a divine surprise pervades our life. A mystic stir is felt. A joyful anguish trembles in our limbs. A dream of beauty dances through the heart. I have to go to the next page. Yeah. A thought from the eternal mind draws near. Intimations cast from the invisible, awaking from infinity's sleep, come down. Symbols of that which never yet was made. As we open, these things come through. There is no question for any of us because we have all felt them in one way or another, sometimes just passing through, at other times making a powerful pressure in the brain or in the heart, and even at other times a kind of flame that is lit in us to grow and bring the psychic being to the front. But now he tells us what happens. But soon the inert flesh responds no more. Then sinks the sacred orgy, delight. The blaze of passion and the tide of power are taken from us. Though a glowing form abides, astonishing earth, imagined supreme, too little of what was meant has left a trace. This is why Sri Aurobindo and Mother took birth, because everything is too little here. He uses too little a few times in Savitri. And we see now with all that's going on in the world and all the chaos and all the darkness sort of imposing on us. And even though the thought from the eternal mind can draw near us and intimations can be cast from the invisible, awaking from infinity sleep, they come down, no doubt. And they are symbols of that which never yet was made. But soon the inert flesh responds no more. Inert because it's not awake. The body is not conscious. This is what we try to do, to awaken consciousness through the Om choir, to learn that we are simply instruments for the divine to play upon in this marvelous game that he is playing with humanity on earth. But soon this inert flesh cannot respond any longer. And this sacred orgy, look, sacred orgy of delight and blaze of passion and the tide of power, all these things are taken from us. And even though they're taken from us, a glowing form abides. Astonishing earth, imagined supreme, but too little of what was meant has left a trace. He continues, earth's eyes half see, her forces half create. Her rarest works are copies of heaven's art. The rarest works of earth are copies of heaven's art. This is extraordinary. We see that all the majestic things of earth, the things that we've cherished, the lakes, the rivers, the mountains, the forests, all are simply copies of heaven's art. And we are going to see this evolution in the earth in new bodies now or in future bodies to come. We're going to see this heavenly art awake in earth and in us. In fact, the time has come. They say we're at the cusp of Kali Yuga, going into Yuga. Let's hope that it's sooner than later. So he's going to continue telling us about this earth that has eyes that half see and forces that half create. And he's going to say now, a radiance of a golden artifice, a masterpiece of inspired device and rule. Her forms hide what they house, and only mime the unseized miracle of self-born shapes that live forever in the eternal's gaze. Do I have any questions thus far? Okay. So we see that this radiance, this golden artifice, Yeats uses the word artifice in this way also. And it's not something artificial or fake at all. It's a majestic work of art, a radiance of a golden artifice, a masterpiece of inspired device and rule. What happens? Well, her forms, these forms on earth, hide what they house and only mime the unseized miracle of self-born shapes that live forever in the eternal's gaze. So we see that these self-born shapes, these radiant symbols that some bring to earth, and we have seen them. We have seen these people, especially in the ashram here, but around the world also. It doesn't matter where they live. They live forever in the eternal's gaze. It's a miracle of self-born shapes. Sri Aurobindo uses the word self-born once for Savitri and once for Ashwapati. A conscious frame, a self-born shape was here. And then he says again, adept of the self-born, unfailing rule, I believe it is, I'm paraphrasing. So here in a difficult, half-finished world is a slow toiling of unconscious powers. Here is man's ignorant, divining mind. We know what divining is here. It's seeking to find something. We had, in the early days of the Matrimandir Gardens nursery, we needed a well. We had only the bore well, was hundreds of feet away, and we had a pipeline coming into the nursery. We needed a well in the nursery to water everything. So what happened was that we got a diviner, and as I recall, he hit the exact spot that Mother wanted, and we got a fantastic well. Incredible, beautiful water. So anyway, we see that here in this difficult, half-finished world is what? Well, it's a slow toiling of unconscious powers. Remember now, they are powers, and the P is capitalized. Here is man's ignorant, divining mind, his genius, born from an inconscient soil. Well, the consciousness has to wake in this soil of our earth. And that consciousness is here now, because Mother has brought it down. Yes, it's not very visible yet to many. It's always much easier to see darkness than to see light. And yet, as the Chinese say, don't curse darkness, simply light a candle. So we say here, he says, here is man's ignorant, divining mind, his genius born from an inconscient soil. To copy on earth's copies is his art. I remember reading Picasso's words, who said that he wanted to see this earth and these forms in a new way. Now, we can be very critical of modern art, but that's not for me, because I try to look behind the existing form to see what is there. And we do have this very humorous quote from Andy Warhol, who, did the tomato cans, painted the tomato cans. And he said, "Don't look too far behind my work because there's nothing there." So, to copy on Earth's copies is his art. For when he strives for things surpassing Earth, too rude the workman's tools, too crude his stuff. Can you scroll up a little? There we go. Thank you. And hardly with his heart's blood, he achieves his transient house of the divine idea, his figure of a time in for the unborn. Isn't that beautiful? Copy on Earth's copies is his art. For when he strives for things surpassing Earth, too rude the workman's tools, too crude his stuff, and hardly, and Sri Aurobindo once writes to Amal, when Amal, I think, suggested barely instead of hardly. And Sri Aurobindo writes a whole discussion on why barely and hardly are totally different. So we see here that Sri Aurobindo, the avatar, the Lord, brings down into the English language the exactly correct word. So he says, and hardly with his heart's blood, he achieves his transient house of the divine idea. Again, idea capitalized, because he often says real idea is a synonym for the supermind. What else? Well, his transient house. It's a passing house, of course, of the divine idea. We have not established this permanence here on earth. And that's going to take a complete transformation of our bodies and our minds and our hearts. But he, with his heart's blood, does achieve something, but it's simply a transient house of the divine idea. And his figure, that is man's idea of a time in, he hyphenates the word time in for the unborn. So we're trying to make an in time for the unborn, capital U, unborn, capital T, time. And I'll go a little more and then we'll conclude for today, because next week will be fully active. Our being thrills with high, far memories and would bring down their dateless meanings here, but too divine for earthly nature's scheme. Beyond our reach, the eternal marvels lays. I'll read it again. Our being thrills with high, far memories. We've had those memories because we were there before we made the decision to take birth in a human form. So we know those eternal marvels, and we know that they're absolute, and they dwell absolute, they dwell unborn, they are immutable. and they are immaculate in the Spirit's deathless air. They are immortal in a world of motionless time and an unchanging muse of deep self-space. So next week we'll see how we can access those realms of the marvels that blaze eternally. Namaste. Thank you.